I promised myself, like, when I book gigs, then I'll upgrade.
Okay, sounds good. We are here talking with LaDonna Redmond, who is running for Hennepin County Commissioner, District 3. District 3. So we're excited to talk with her. We've just been having a good old time talking about music and all the stuff we love. Music, makeup, and everything.
Absolutely.
But now let's really get into it with this race. The incumbent has been there for quite some time, is that right?
Well, actually, she's only been there for one term.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So what do you feel is the flavor that you're bringing to this seat? Now, a lot of people are not that familiar with what the commission does.
Right.
But yet it is the largest or the second largest body of government within the state of Minnesota. So what are some of the things that you would be responsible for should you win? And what are some of the changes? And we'll delve a little deeper into that. But what are some, just, you know, your kind of elevator speech? Why are you running?
Well, I'm running because Donald Trump won the national election as president. I mean, let's be clear. I was good being a community organizer, doing the work that I do on still a national platform, and making a lot of change in the community.
And this is around food justice. Talk about food.
Yeah, so my son had food allergies when he was born, and through those food allergies, I learned about issues around food access in our communities. And I'm a thinker, but I'm also a doer. So I will intellectualize something all day, but there's part of me also that has to implement.
That's right.
So what we did was to start to grow our own food in our backyard for my son. And that was really successful. And then I got involved in this community conversation because I was a community organizer before I became a mom. So everybody knew me. And so they're like, oh, people want to talk about food sustainability, but we don't know what that is. So why don't you go to that meeting? And I did, and so the food sustainability meeting led me to talking with Black farmers.
Okay.
And we started a farmers market.
Okay.
My farmers market was the first market in the state of Illinois to take EBT.
Really?
We did the pilot project for the state of Illinois.
Okay.
And then we began to convert vacant lots to urban farm sites. And this was at a time, this is 20 years ago.
Sure.
You know, so this is at a time when people were not.
We weren't there yet.
No, people were looking at me like I had 3 heads. So I said, oh, I want to grow food. You know, in the...
People were like, why?
Right.
Go to
the store, right? Like, yeah, what store? But even I didn't make the connection until my sister, I called my sister. We talk 2 or 3 times a day, so I called my sister. And my brother-in-law answered the phone, and he's like, oh, Val, go on to the store. She'll be back in 10 minutes. And I'm like, 10 minutes? 10 minutes from my house, there's what? Because I was spending a lot of time going to get Wade's food, going to get food for the family, because he was allergic to dairy products, all dairy products, eggs, shellfish.
Wow.
So, and peanuts. So we were vegans, but that didn't really just necessarily overlap into, you know, avoiding this allergy. So we had to really redo how we ate. So I'm traveling all over the city to get the best quality food for him. I didn't want food that had a lot of pesticides and stuff in it. So to the long and short of it, I'm like 10 minutes from my house. So I did a little experiment. What can I get to 10 minutes from my house?
Interesting.
And I could get to every kind of fast food in the world. I could get to every kind of chicken, all varieties of chicken. And we had Popeye's chicken, we had Kentucky Fried Chicken, we had Harold's chicken, we had Uncle Raymond's. You know, you got all kinds of hamburgers, White Castle, Burger King, McDonald's, Jack in the Box. I mean, every way you would go, I could get any of that. But what I needed most for my son was food that did not have pesticides and weren't genetically modified. Because he's a baby, and I was making baby food. I didn't want to grind up pesticides for my baby. So, you know, that's when I realized. I said, we don't have a grocery store 10 minutes from my house, more like 15 to 20 minutes, which is not bad because I had a car. But what I began to really think about was, well, what if a person doesn't have a car, didn't have a husband, doesn't have a college degree? At that time, we had the internet, doesn't have the internet. You know, can't do all of the things that I can do with some difficulty, but I can do them. So that work led to some, you know, statewide policy work, and then federal policy work. Began working on the Farm Bill. It was pretty successful. You know, it's a very nice place that I am in terms of the development of that particular field. So I've seen a lot of things come, and I'd like to see some of the things go. Like, least favorite phrase in the food desert is like, I saw that come, and now I'm like, oh, it's leaving.
Yeah,
that's good, because our communities are not just black holes where you just put stuff in and it just falls down to the bottom, never to be seen again. And it's certainly not communities where people don't eat.
Right.
And so that pushed me into really understanding what are our gathering points around food. And so making a cultural shift around food justice was really also a really important part of that work.
That's awesome. So now your thrust, here we are, 2016, 2017, yeah, and now with the election of Trump and whatnot. And we kind of saw it, and you remember when it was, oh, that'll never happen. He'll never become president.
Only person that said that what happened was Keith Ellison. I remember watching him say that on CNN, and people were like, it's not going to win. And he was like, y'all better be careful. He could win.
And lo and behold.
Dun, 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 dun.
And so what kind of effect did that have on you, and how did that factor into you running now, and for this particular seat?
The night that he won, that day I spent, making sure that I voted, family voted, friends voted, kids, friends, everybody came up like, did you vote? Okay. You did it right.
Don't sit down, did you vote?
You're right, don't get comfortable. Come on, let's go vote. Let's go get you registered to vote.
Yeah.
And so I spent the day really focused on that. I had got very involved in the DFL, became a delegate, and just did a bunch of stuff to make sure that, I did my part.
Yeah.
And it got to, 8, 9 o'clock, and I ran out of fingers and toes. I could not count any more delegates for Hillary. And I just turned the TV off, and, I was just sitting there. The room goes pitch black. I'm sitting there with Taylor, my daughter, and she's like, what we gonna do now?
Wow.
And I was like, that's a real good question. Let me think on that for a second.
Right.
And I started really thinking about historically, this is not new for us as black people in America.
But in 2017, you're kind of like.
Yeah, but I had to force myself to think about, Harriet Tubman. I'm sure she was like, here we are in the middle of slavery, what we gonna do now? Well, we gonna get free, and I'm not gonna stop,
Right.
Or Sojourner Truth. Black women have always had to answer the question, what are we gonna do now?
Right.
And that's what I told her, and I, walked her through history, very deliberately, and it was really, I was seeking encouragement for myself too, but I had to say, my aunt had to ask the question, what are we going to do now? I mean, she wanted to be a part of a labor union. She just wanted a decent wage, and she was spit upon. But she became the first black woman to lead a labor union in the United States.
Okay.
Yeah. And so this is not a question that we have not answered. We've answered this question before.
Right.
So what we're going to do now is we're going to fight. And we're going to do everything that we got to do to make sure that we don't lose one single solitary right.
Don't go nowhere. We'll be right back. Want more? Check us out online, www.blackfolksmattermn.com. So you mentioned that we should fight.
Yes.
Okay, but what does fighting mean? We've grown up, we've glamorized the Black Power movement, all of it. It looks sexy. We're all black, we pump our fists, we protest. But what happens after that? And when we tell people that they should fight, what does that mean? Because I feel like people aren't really clear about what fighting means in real time. Like, what are they supposed to be doing?
Yeah, I agree with you. I heard Byron Stevenson talk about romanticizing the civil rights movement. He's like, I feel like y'all are describing like some type of circus, Rosa Parks sat down on the bus. The next day, Dr. King marched on Washington, and then the third day we got, all of these rights. Yeah. And, it really misses the point. So for me, the fighting is really about education. Okay. First, we have to know what our issues are. We have to be informed. We have to know what's going on in our communities. I'm a person who looks at history. I love history. So I look at the things that those folks did. Rosa Parks did just one day decided she was tired of selling a bunch. She had attended Freedom School with the NAACP. She had studied. She was studying. She was already an organizer. You know, so she knew what she was doing when she did it. This was not by accident. You know, she didn't just trip into history.
Right.
This was a well thought out strategy.
Right.
And it was a part of a larger strategy. So people have to study, and they have to study together, and they have to read, and they have to think, and you have to understand, well, what is it that you're fighting for? Well, it's really clear at that point they were fighting for human dignity, you know, not to be shepherded to the back of the bus because of the color of your skin, and not to be dismissed or beaten because you're in the wrong part of town, those kinds of things. So the second part of fighting is once you know what you're fighting for, now you got to do something that actually is going to change the circumstances. So now if you're an organizer, then that might mean putting yourself in the line of fire, like Rosa Parks did. So she's going to jump the conversation off, but then behind that, there's a legal strategy. So then we have to, we got to know some lawyers around here, so somebody got to go to the schoolhouse and become an attorney, you know, or we have to recruit attorneys who are also going to help us push these cases forward. I would say the next thing is the practical thing, is the part that I think exists. I know it exists in our community, but nonprofits in our community right now usually only serve for social service purposes. But then we have to do things on the ground in our communities. The Black Panther Party was not just about look at Shard.
Right.
They had healthcare centers.
That's right. They
had cooperatives. They made shoes. They had the breakfast program, which became the pilot for the national breakfast program in the United States. So we have to know that it's not just one thing, you know, just the breakfast program.
It's a series of events.
It's a series of actions, but it's constant and it's consistent. And one of the things that we have to develop is stamina, because we want things to change tomorrow, and they may not necessarily change tomorrow. I'm in a campaign that started in November, and it's July, and it's not over for, you know, until this November. So I have to have stamina, and there have definitely been days where I have been like, this has got to have been the most ridiculous and crazy thing that I've ever done.
Right.
But I have to motor on.
Right.
Because I made a commitment to do it.
Wow.
And so I have to keep it going, keep it pushing, and keep the issues at the forefront of why I'm doing it.
Okay.
So fighting looks a lot of different kinds of ways, but it's not just, you know, shutting down the highway. And I did shut down the highway.
Sure.
I saw a lot of people in Chicago shut down the highway on the same day that the chosen few Some of my relatives was out there on the highway with their pictures. I'm like, look at y'all out here being political. You know, with the weaves and everything. Like, child, this is ridiculous out here. We just Black Lives Matter. I think it's fantastic. but they're waking up. And so that's the thing that they do. But best believe that when they go to their, you know, C-suite offices, they're going to implement now what they believe to be Black Lives Matter.
Right.
And so that's what we have to do.
Okay.
And so we have to, but we got to do it. Can't just talk
about it.
You got to really like do more than even be about it.
Right.
You got to put it in action. My son, food allergies. I could have just stopped with shopping at Whole Foods.
Right.
You know, it was killing me, but financially. But I'm like, you know, well, what does my neighborhood need? And who else has to answer this question? So that meant getting involved in the community and then asking a larger question: what does community need? And people saying, well, you know, there's a program where we convert vacant lots to flower gardens. Why don't you stretch the envelope a little bit? I talked to the alderman. Oh yeah, sure. I'll sign off on that. The city called me and like, well, you want them lots? We got 5 more. So if you want 5, we give you 5 more. You get 10. How you go? How would the people? You know, and we get out there and we start growing food from the neighborhood, and we find out a lot more about our neighborhood than I ever had imagined. And I've knocked those doors.
Wow.
You know, I've talked to people. I lived on the west side of Chicago. I wasn't born on the west side of Chicago, but I lived on the west side of Chicago the better part of 20 years at that point. You know, and I didn't know level of hunger in our communities. I didn't know the disconnection that we felt from our food.
Right.
But when I started growing food, I started finding out people had come from the South. They knew how to grow food.
That's right.
And, you know, they were like, what you trying to do, bring slavery back? Of course not. You know? Why would I do that? Why would I do that?
It's
slavery and food, not the same thing. But the historical trauma of slavery that disconnects us from the land keeps us from being stewards of our community.
Yes.
And so, for me, the reclamation of the land was much more important than the product that was coming out of it. So getting people to come out and, you know, poo-pooed us, then come out and say, I see you growing da-da-da. You know, I'd like to grow some collard greens next year. You think I can have a lot? Of course you can.
Yeah. You know, and it's funny, I think previous generations, everyone maintained some form of garden. Like I look at my grandfather, no matter where they lived in Milwaukee, he always had a small patch of land. If he was living in an apartment, he had a patch of land someplace out in the outskirts of the city or something, growing something. So growing is very much a part of our heritage. And I think it's great that through this food justice movement, that more people are getting reconnected back to the land. Especially now with worrying about whether foods are non-GMO, if they've been genetically altered, pesticides, and all these different things. Like we've put so much trust into our governments and leaders, thinking that they would not do anything to hurt our food supply, our water supply. And so we have to just be a little bit more vigilant about where our food is coming from.
Absolutely.
So,
and the other part of your question is that, you know, we talked about leaders. Well, somebody got to run for office. It can't always be us pointing our finger at who is not treating us right.
Yes.
We have to run for office. And so the reason why I'm running for office is because I'm like, well, I've done all of that stuff. You know, I've converted vacant lots to urban farm site. I've started and ran a women's treatment center. Started and ran youth centers. I've done a variety of projects that are still in existence in terms of projects, programs, and organizations. So what else can I do? You know, and I was like, you haven't run for office? And I'm like, that's crazy. Who wants to do that? You know, and I can usually talk myself out of bad ideas. But that one was this idea that stuck.
That's a solid idea. Don't go nowhere. We'll be right back. Want more? Check us out online, www.blackfolksmattermn.com. So how is it going, and why the county commission? There's several seats, but why that particular one?
I backed into the county commissioner role because of what county commissioners do. So I grew up in Cook County, and I grew up with the child of a county commissioner. So I have an idea of what a county commissioner does. And so Mr. Stroger was ever present in the community. You know, he was like, he'd come to the block club party, he'd go to Chosen Few picnic, he was around, you know. He would come to, he was also, you know, a county commissioner, but my first job was working at the Chicago Public Library because of Mr. Stroger. And he knew I liked to read, and that's how I ended up with that job. My point is that I didn't know what the job was, but I knew what the personality was. And so the personality that I saw in Mr. Stroger was accessibility. He was open, he would answer your questions, and he never missed an opportunity to speak to you. If you saw him on 87th and Stony Island and he going into the Walgreens, and you say, hey, Mr. Stroger, hey, how you doing? What's going on? How's school? I mean, all you trying to do is say, hey, Mr. Stroger, you know what I'm saying? Now you got to have a conversation. Or if you call his office as an adult, calling his office and needing assistance with something, no problem. His secretary like, oh, I have Mr. Stroger call you right back, but hold on one second. Let me see if I ask him a question. I'll let you know, don't worry about it. So this responsiveness that I got, I was like, oh, county commissioner race is coming up. So that's how I found it. I went to the state the races that were coming up in the next year.
Yeah.
And it's county commission. I was like, oh, I know what that
You
is.
know about all of that.
I know about that. So I'm like, that's it. That's where I want to start. And yeah, there's a state rep. Seats that were up. There was this was after the city council elections. I think. And
Would you ever add for city council?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah. I would have thought about it.
Yeah.
I live in the Ward 13. And so I think it's an interesting ward. It's changing a lot of families, very quiet neighborhood, but I think what they also have found out is that, law enforcement and police brutality is not missing it, and so they too may get shot because a police officer has a mentality around aggression rather than de-escalation. Right. So I think it would have been an interesting conversation, and
absolutely.
Yeah. So, and I'd love to have interesting conversations. It's fascinating to me how people think.
Yeah.
But I know that the county commissioner works on systems, and I'm a systems change person. So that's been most of my work. How do you change systems?
Right.
We talk about the food system or agricultural system. How do you change that system? How do you get in the system and create innovation? I moved here, and we built the Friendship Store with Seward Community Co-op.
That's right.
And that was something that people told me would never happen. We'd never build a grocery store in a Black community.
Honey, it's beautiful.
It's beautiful.
People say that.
You'd be surprised what people say.
It's beautiful.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
And it's in a Black community, and it's
historically Black.
Historically.
Across from Sabathany.
Yeah.
Where Prince went to school when it was Ramsey Jr. It's
Yeah.
it's hitting on all cylinders.
It's hitting on all cylinders.
Yeah.
And so that was something though that people said could not be done. And so it took me 20 years to get to that point, because that was a part of the initial plan to build a grocery store. And you never can predict where destiny will take you.
That's right.
So I'm here in South Minneapolis and we build a grocery store in a historically Black community.
Yes.
And I am just ecstatic. But that's my work. System change. Not just how do we create the public policy. Well, we already have done that. We've created the public policy. We have the support. We have the infrastructure. We know where the food is. Now we need the capital. And so Seward Co-op provided the capital in terms of their expansion of their brand to that neighborhood. And it brings so many possibilities.
It does. It really does. I mean, it was just a welcome addition. So let's get into it. You and I talked last, and we discovered that the county is building a new women's prison or detention center. How do you feel about that? Do you think that we need that?
No.
And is it something that you would support if elected?
I would not have supported the addition. Specifically, it's the addition of 50 more women's beds.
Okay.
And no, I would not. That's not the thing that I would have supported. And there's a couple of reasons why. Number one, I think right before I started, really becoming very public about the race, I was still in a meet and greet kind of stage and get an idea what people thought about my running. There was a Star Tribune story that talked about indigenous women being the number one group of people who were arrested and held in Hennepin County Jail. Indigenous women. Not even Black men.
Right.
They're arresting indigenous women. So when you arrest a woman, you essentially incarcerate their children. 1 in 3, I think it's 1 in 3 women who go to jail. It might be 2 out of 3 women who go to jail have children.
Right.
So when you incarcerate a woman, you incarcerate their children.
Yeah.
So you arrest a woman, you stop her from working, you've just taken food out of this person's mouth.
Most disrupted an entire family, and it may not just be the children.
And it may not be. It could be the grandmother. We're usually the caretakers of our family, of our neighborhoods, and our communities. Yeah. So I would not have built 50 more beds, because I know who's going to end up in those beds. It would be indigenous women and Black women and brown women who would end up there. So that's not what I would want to see sisters who look like me. That doesn't need to happen. What I would prefer happen to them is that if they get arrested, that they get as many opportunities to get out of trouble as possible. So we do have drug court treatment bed need. So
Sure.
I would like to see 50 more treatment beds. I guarantee you, if I build a jail bed, we're going to build two treatment beds.
Right.
And we need one of those beds to be for people who have mental health issues.
Yeah.
So there's a variety of ways that the county can spend its money if
Mhm.
it chooses to. But the thing that they don't have at the county are people who are sitting there with the equity lens. Now they can be concerned about equity all they want, but if you don't have a neighbor who looks like me, who's gone through the issues that I've gone through, or other issues that other people who look like me have gone through, there's no way that you can come to that job and fully understand what I'm saying when I say no more prison beds.
Yeah.
Because you might have to think about it. I think people on the county commission have to think about it. Well, why wouldn't we build 50 more beds? See, I don't have to think about that.
Right.
I know who's going to be in those beds, and that's not something that I would want to happen on my watch.
Don't go nowhere. We'll be right back. Want more? Check us out online, www.blackfolksmattermn.com. So, housing. Now, the county owns a lot of land.
Yeah.
And you mentioned converting a lot of abandoned property, a lot of abandoned land in Chicago, and using that for food. Would you propose something similar with the county, or how would you deal with, so that's food, but what would you do around dealing with the affordable housing crisis that we're currently faced with here in the Twin Cities? And we know that 30,000 to 40,000 more people are expected to come to Minneapolis. So how do we plan for that? We already got 60,000 people on waiting lists, right? But we're sitting on a lot of land. And the county has a lot of leverage, a lot of power. So how would you leverage that, those things to address those issues?
So it is really in the budget. You mentioned this earlier. The Hennepin County budget is the second largest budget outside of the state of Minnesota's budget. So it's 20% of the population, so we have a budget that matches that. So we also have those resources. You mentioned the land resources. So we would have to leverage land resources, and we'd also have to change the budget's priorities. The county bought an office building for its county office at $83 million, I think was spent on it. $83 million. Well, even if it's $43 million, I'll say $43 million. Even if it's $43 million. $43 million to build an office, to buy an office building, or $43 million to invest in affordable housing. It's not hard for me to pick. See, so the priority of the County Board of Commissioners has to be affordable housing. So my role would be to make that a priority. So we do have land. Most of that land is sitting as a part of buildings that are being abandoned. So there's a number of places that you could offer RFPs to developers who will build affordable housing, as opposed to just selling that land to developers. One of the things that's interesting to me is the conversation around the crime lab. The incumbent, the woman that I'm running against, has led the charge to move the crime lab, which I think is just fine. But what's going to happen to the crime lab's land after the crime lab moves? The crime lab sits right in front of the U.S. Stadium. So will the land go to the U.S. Stadium? Or will the land be used to leverage affordable housing? So I wouldn't mind selling it to the owners of U.S. Stadium, but I would also need them to bring enough money to build some affordable housing. So we have to encourage our business community to take on this issue and use their resources to build the housing that we need. We levy taxes. It's a very easy question to ask. Our taxes, we just raised Hennepin County taxes half a penny. That half a penny can go pretty far. All of it is supposedly going to transit right now. But along with transit, people need housing.
Wow. So is there one other issue, one other thing that you would be pursuing once elected?
Wow, one other thing.
I know one, just one.
Just one more. Equity. I would be pursuing equity. I believe that in order to have an equitable county, we have to have a strategy. And the county lacks a strategy. They don't have an oversight committee, and they don't have any goals. And And so as a county board commissioner, one of the things that I would be wanting to talk to my colleagues about is developing a diversity or racial equity council that would look at recommending those kinds of goals and strategies to the county commissioner, and then offering those to the county administrator so that he could make sure that he had Black and brown leaders in his organization.
Right.
So that's one huge area, but equity across the board doesn't just mean we get more Black and brown bodies, it means we get transparency.
Yeah.
So the other part of that is becoming a more accessible county commissioner.
Right.
I have people in my district who are concerned about Southwest Light Rail, and sometimes their concerns are just simply dismissed as NIMBY, not in my backyard. But as I talk to individuals, they're not NIMBY issues to them. They want to be heard. And so how do you represent the entire district and talk to them about what equity for you is transparency.
Right.
You you just simply want somebody to listen to you.
Acknowledge you. Yeah.
To acknowledge you. And some of the things I've heard, they've got some good points.
Sure.
I would like to know why the light rail is not going down Lake Street. And some people would say it's because it's not a beautiful neighborhood to go through.
Oh, okay.
That there might be.
It's a beauty contest.
It's a beauty contest. It's a scenery.
Wow.
So some have raised the issue of it not being as scenic as going through the Kenilworth corridor.
Versus making sure
the maximum number of people actually get on the train. Now, I assure you that I cannot stop the Southwest Light Rail project. But what I can do for my constituency is ask those questions.
Yes.
So whether it's a question about Southwest Light Rail, or whether it's a question about housing, or whether it's a question about food and food access, what are we going to do? The role of the county commissioner is to voice the concerns of the people. And as I promised them, if someone wants me to vote to support something, and you saying, no, don't support that, you can guarantee we're going to have a community meeting about it, because I want to see how that turns out. Because they will have to tell me whatever it is you got to tell them. You tell them, and they'll tell me, and then we'll have a great conversation there. But if you can't convince them, and they're the voters, then how is it that you convince me?
And there's that. One other question. So I know that earlier people were trying to dissuade you from running.
Yes.
And I'm guessing that you've been able to turn some folks around. Have you been able to have some conversations with people that maybe were staunch opposers? How has that been navigated? And talk about the demographics of Ward 13, right, where you live.
Yeah, it's primarily white.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say it's probably one of the, it's primarily white.
Yeah.
I would say so.
Do they share your equity lens? Like, do you feel like they support that?
It's an interesting conversation, because you're talking about predominantly white people who have not ever been forced to even use the word racial equity or the phrase racial equity. So, but Donald Trump is a great advocate for us right now.
Sure.
Because he's doing so many outrageous things that people are like, oh my God, I am not a racist. Would you help me? Would you help me, understand how I can be active in this conversation that is around anti-racism? So it's a conversation, it's a two-way conversation. So those people who were not happy that I was running, it was an interesting conversation, because I think the DFL and other Democrats live in an echo chamber.
Sure.
So they say something and they think it's 1,000 people saying it back. It's not so. So when I go out in the community and people don't know who the county commissioner is and don't know what one does, that lets me know that we are living in an echo chamber. And we're also transitioning out of a time where a party is going to be able to tell people how to vote. And so many people have said that. So when I start knocking on doors in my neighborhood, people are like, oh yeah, that sounds good. Okay. What does the county commissioner do?
Exactly. So in the 13th ward, they don't know.
Don't know who the county commissioner is, and they don't know what she does or what they do.
Interesting.
So I'm the first person to knock on their door and say, hi, I'm LaDonna Redmond. I'm running for Hennepin County Commissioner. I want to talk to you about your concerns for the county. And they're like, oh, what's the county commissioner? You know, so I always have to have that conversation. The people who were trying to dissuade me were saying things like, the incumbent was nice.
Okay.
She's nice.
Okay.
And she hasn't done anything wrong.
Okay.
And I think that's fine.
Sure.
But nice is not going to stand up against Donald Trump.
Right.
Nice is not going to stop building 20 beds,
Yeah.
50 beds,
50 beds.
for Hennepin County women. Nice is not going to eliminate video visitation.
That was that other issue. Yes. Keep going.
Right. Nice is not going to have Nice doesn't have an equity lens.
Right.
And we need to stop. We need to stop places where we're having more disparities.
Yeah.
We don't need more incarceration.
No.
We don't need more prison beds. We certainly don't need to penalize poor people. So, cash bail reform.
Yes.
We can take the cash out of the jail system probably before we can actually destroy the jail system. So if we can eliminate these things that our people get caught up in and their lives get kind of just pulled off track, then maybe we can have a chance to have communities where people are thriving and growing. So what people were saying to me was really just a reflection to me of their own internalized white supremacy. And their feelings that as a black or brown woman, I should be satisfied with a white woman who is leading and doing good enough.
And who's nice.
Who's nice. And good enough and nice is not good enough for me.
Right.
I know what Donald Trump is trying to do.
Yeah.
They think they know. I know. History has told me what someone like Donald Trump and people who support him are capable of.
Right.
So we have to really make sure that our county is the defense mechanism for those that are most likely to be discriminated against or harmed by a system as the money is being pulled out of it. County government is the oldest form of government in the country. Yeah. And Hennepin County is older than the state of Minnesota. Mm-hmm. So we have to make sure that that's a real strong safety net. And there are too many gaps in the safety net, and it's because the County Board of Commissioners is not as connected to the community as they should be, not as aware of what's going on in the community as they should be, and definitely not tightening up on that safety net. Yeah. So, and there's never been a black, brown, or indigenous person on the Hennepin County Board.
In the history of it.
Not never. And that's the other reason why I ran. Yeah. After I started researching it, I was like, oh, well, I got to run. Yeah. So my running has caused my incumbent to take up my talking points, which is fantastic.
Go figure.
Go figure that. So she's for cash bail reform, and she doesn't want to criminalize poor people too. That's fantastic. Racial equity council, all these kind of things, fantastic. Sure. So I'm like, well, if I could do that just because I was running at the convention, what can I do if I challenge her in the general election? Yeah. How many more talking points will she pick up? So we're going to push the agenda around equity and the ending of disparities. And she'll be if she wins, she'll be a better county commissioner. If I win, I'll be a good, excellent county commissioner, and we will end disparities in Hennepin County.
I love it. LaDonna, I could talk to you forever, and I still want to go with you to these DJ classes.
I got to do a set. People have to come. I have to do a 7-minute set. It's going to be on live stream. I'm practicing my music. This house is straight up house. It's got a little George Clinton. It's got a little, oh my God, Alexander O'Neill. There's a mix of an Alexander O'Neill song and Gladys. Oh my God, it's just some power. You're just gonna be rocking. Be like, hey.
We're here
it's a mix of a Prince song too.
Oh, I know. I knew you had to throw him in there. You have to throw the purple one in there.
You have to have Prince in there.
Absolutely. But LaDonna, thank you so much. Thank you so much for tuning in to Black Voices with Black Folks Matter Minnesota. I'm your host, Anika Robbins. It's been real. Want more? Check us out online